I was sitting on the porch when my son walked up, smiling like nothing happened. Just 2 days ago, he tricked me into signing over control of our family trust, then transferred $5 million into his own account. He said, "It's just business, Dad. You wouldn't understand." I nodded, sipping my tea. Inside, my heart didn't break. It hardened. What he didn't know was, I'd already spoken with the bank's fraud unit and had his signature on tape. This morning, he called me, panicking. His account was frozen. I said, "You wanted control? Now you can explain it to the judge." And that was before he saw what I did with the house deed. Stay with me to the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I know where this story's reaching. That morning felt off before I even turned the corner onto my street. Maybe it was the breeze, just cool enough to slip under my collar, or the way the clouds hung too low over the Catskills, like they'd forgotten how to move. Still, I carried on with my usual walk through the neighborhood, nodding to a couple of early dog walkers, one of whom barely returned the gesture. Small things, nothing worth fretting about. But then I reached my front door, key in hand, and everything changed. The key didn't turn. I pulled it out, tried again. Same result. The lock fought me like it had never met me before. I frowned and jiggled the knob, locked tight. Maybe I was losing it. Wrong key. I checked the brass tag on the ring. House. Same one I'd used for over 30 years. I stepped back, glanced at the garage, walked over and punched in the code. The panel blinked red. Invalid. Twice more. And nothing. No note. No text. No heads up from anyone. Just a silent door and a blinking panel. I stood there for a long minute, heart beating just a little faster than it should have. Finally, I pulled out my phone and called Griffin. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey, Dad. Morning, I'm standing in front of the house. My key doesn't work." A pause. "Right. Yeah, we updated the locks. I thought I mentioned that." "You didn't." I kept my tone light, but something curled cold in my stomach. "Garage code too?" "Yeah, we had to upgrade the whole system. Lana's been worried about security." I didn't know how to respond to that. I'd lived in this house since before Griffin could ride a bike. I helped design the porch. I poured the concrete for the back steps. And now, suddenly, I was locked out, because my daughter-in-law was worried about security. Griffin cleared his throat. "Listen, we were going to talk about it at dinner tonight. You're still coming, right?" "Sure," I said. "I'll be there." I hung up and just stood there for a bit, listening to the sound of birds I no longer recognized. Then I walked around the side of the house. The porch furniture, my late wife Marjorie's favorite rocking chairs, was gone, replaced by a sleek, modern patio set, the kind you'd see in a staged home. I peered through the window. New curtains, new rug, my recliner missing. In its place, a minimalist leather lounge chair that looked like it had never been sat in. It didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like a hotel room where they'd cleaned out the last guest without telling him. I pressed my hand to the glass. The house didn't recognize me. Later, as I sat on a bench at the park nearby, I thought back to the trust. A year ago, Griffin had come to me with a big idea, real estate startup, tax advantages. "Just sign it over temporarily," he'd said. "It'll help us get the funding." I'd trusted him. My only son. I signed over the property with the belief it was just for legal structuring. He promised everything would revert once the deal closed. I didn't ask for a lawyer. Marjorie had warned me before she passed. Don't sign anything without someone in your corner. But I hadn't wanted to make Griffin feel like I didn't trust him. Now, I was starting to think that was a mistake. When Griffin texted later that day to confirm dinner at 6 p.m., I replied with a thumbs up. No more, no less. That evening, I drove to their place, 10 minutes away, but it felt like another world. The moment I walked in, I noticed the temperature, cold, not from the thermostat, but from the silence. Lana greeted me with a tight-lipped smile. "Glad you could make it, Harlan." Griffin offered a one-armed hug and led me to the table. Roast chicken, overcooked green beans, and silence for appetizers. "So," Griffin began, eyes darting to Lana. "We wanted to talk about, well, planning." I set down my fork. "Planning?" Lana reached under the table and pulled out a glossy brochure. "It's called Whispering Pines. A really lovely senior community, beautiful facilities, social events, on-site medical. I blinked. What's this got to do with me? Griffin's voice softened. We just think it's time to start transitioning. Dad, the house is a lot to manage. This place would be easier. It's been planned for a few weeks, Lana added, like she was offering reassurance, not betrayal. Weeks. They'd decided this without me, discussed it, printed brochures, scheduled dinner, all without asking the one person it would affect most. I see. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask questions. I just sat there and let the betrayal sink in like slow poison. When dinner ended, Lana stood up and reached into her purse. She handed me a small white envelope. You'll find the keys to your new place inside, she said, too brightly. The envelope sat untouched on the kitchen table, a silent intruder in the quiet of my house. I'd made a pot of coffee, but it had gone cold beside me. Forgotten. The early sunlight crept across the floor, but it brought no comfort. I watched it in silence, arms folded, my eyes drifting now and then to the thin white rectangle with my name neatly printed across the front. I remembered Marjorie's voice, soft but steady. Don't let them rush you. Har, take your time. They always want you to move faster than you should. She was usually talking about contractors or doctors, but now it echoed in my mind with new meaning. I hadn't touched the envelope since Lana tossed it to me like it was a party favor. Something about the way she said it, like I was being gifted a convenience, not evicted, kept playing in my head. There was a knock at the door. I hesitated, not moving. The knock came again, a little louder this time. When I opened it, Lana stood there, holding 2 paper cups of coffee like we were old friends meeting on a sunny porch. Good morning, Harlan, she said with the kind of brightness that didn't match the situation. Thought I'd bring you a treat. Hazelnut, right? I didn't answer, just stepped aside. She walked in like she still lived here, like it was already hers. I thought it'd be nice to talk, she said, setting the coffee on the counter. Griffin's been so worried. You know how he gets. All that stress, running the business, the family. I just think this move could be good for everyone. I sat down, still didn't speak. Lana sat across from me and tilted her head with what I assume was meant to look like concern. We saw a lovely unit at Maple Ridge, she went on. It's got a private balcony. You'd love it. We thought maybe we'd drive out later today and take a look. I looked down at the table. No, she didn't seem to notice the envelope still sitting there. Then she slipped, just for a second. It's a great fit now that you've moved out. I looked up. I mean, when you do move, she corrected quickly, smiling too wide. I nodded slowly. Right. Her phone buzzed, and she stood. Well, I'll let you enjoy your coffee. Just think about it, okay? She gave me a quick wave and walked out as if she'd just dropped off a neighborly muffin basket. I waited until I heard her car leave the driveway before I touched the coffee. I poured it down the sink. That evening, my phone buzzed again. A group message, family thread. My name was included, but I hadn't said a word in it yet. The first message was from Griffin. So proud of Dad for making this decision. Transition plan is in place. Photos of Maple Ridge were attached. A few cousins chimed in with hearts and smiley faces. Looks great, Uncle Harlan. I sat there staring at the screen. The narrative was already built. I hadn't even opened the damn envelope, but according to them, I was gone. I felt like a ghost haunting my own story. Later that night, I found myself digging through the side drawer in the den. It was where Marjorie kept little clippings and things she thought we might need someday. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Then I found it. A folded newspaper clipping from 3 years ago. Griffin's photo, grinning beside 2 men in suits. Headline, Local Startup Crashes After Failing to Secure Funding. I remembered the call back then, how rushed he'd been. Dad, I've got this opportunity, but I need to move fast. Just a quick shift in ownership. Temporary. For tax reasons. The trust. The house. My hands began to tremble. Was he covering his mistakes with my assets? I didn't know. but the thought lodged in my chest like a nail. I picked up the phone and called Charles. He answered on the second ring. "Harlan." "You all right?" I had a question," I said. We spoke for 20 minutes. I told him bits and pieces, nothing too revealing. Charles, always the careful one, probed gently. "Did you sign anything recently?" "No," I lied. He paused. "Harlan, listen to me. Family or not, get everything in writing, and keep a record, especially when money's involved." After we hung up, I sat for a long time. Sunday morning, I forced myself to go to the diner. Habit, mostly, but I didn't eat, just stared out the window with a full plate growing cold in front of me. Then a voice interrupted me. "Hey, Harlan Fancy Place." I blinked at him. "Oh, was I not supposed to know?" He chuckled. "Lana mentioned it at the grocery store." I stood up and left without a word. Left the food, the coffee, the table. At home, I sat back at the kitchen table and stared at the envelope. The damn thing was still there. I opened it. Inside was a lease agreement. Already signed by Griffin and a property manager. The only blank was my signature line. I stared at it until the letters blurred. That night, sleep didn't come. But this time it wasn't confusion. It was anger. I climbed the attic stairs 2 at a time, breath short, heart pounding, and unlocked the safe Marjorie hadn't touched in years. The safe was built into the wall behind a bookshelf. A quiet place. One only she and I knew about, for years. It stored old tax returns, family documents, a few trinkets we agreed were important someday. My fingers trembled against the dial. I hadn't opened it since the week she passed. Inside, the same stack of files sat neatly bundled. Nothing had moved. Except, there it was, an envelope with Marjorie's handwriting on it. For Harlan, if they ever try to move you. I sat back on my heels, the attic's dusty air wrapping around me like an old coat. My name in her handwriting hit harder than I expected. I peeled it open. Inside were 2 things, a notarized addendum to the trust agreement, and a post-it note. The note read, "You trusted too easily. Keep this safe. You might need it more than you think." The trust addendum was dated a week before her final hospitalization. It stated explicitly that no assets, including the primary residence, could be reallocated, sold, or leased without my written consent and presence in front of a notary. The original agreement had vague language. This addendum was airtight, and I'd never seen it before. How long had they been counting on me forgetting, slipping, fading into the background like an old rug? I stared at the signature at the bottom. Marjorie's and mine. I had no memory of signing it, but there it was. Notarized. Legitimate. Downstairs. The landline rang again. I hurried to answer, but the caller had already hung up. No number. No message. For the first time since this whole mess began, a sense of control stirred in my chest. Someone out there knew what was happening, and someone had made sure I found this document. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. The next morning, I drove back to the leasing office. The receptionist looked up with that same familiarity. "Mr. Seibert back again? Forgot something yesterday?" "I'd like to speak with your manager," I said. Calm, but firm. She frowned slightly, but made the call. A few minutes later, a woman in a tailored navy suit appeared from the hallway, extending a hand. "Mr. Seibert? I'm Melissa. How can I help you?" "I have a concern about a lease supposedly signed by me," I said. "I'd like to see the original paperwork again." Melissa brought me into a glass-walled conference room. She pulled up the scanned contract on her laptop and turned the screen toward me. There it was again, my signature. Slanted just enough to resemble mine, but something was off. "Who dropped off this lease?" I asked. She hesitated. "A man and woman. They said they were your family. I can't recall names. But the woman signed the check for the deposit. All very standard." I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat. "What day was it dropped off?" She turned the screen. "March 9th, the day of Marjorie's funeral." I thanked her, stood up, and left without another word. Back home, I opened my desk drawer. Checkbook, gone. Passport, gone. I kept a fireproof lockbox, and even that had been moved. My things, my identity, were slowly being siphoned off piece by piece while I watched, polite and confused. In the kitchen drawer, I found a locksmith's business card wedged beneath an old takeout menu. I'd never seen it before. The date scribbled on the back read, April 5th, the week the locks stopped working. I ran a hand through my hair and leaned on the counter. My own home felt like a stage set built for someone else, like I was already written out of the script. That evening, I drove to Griffin's office again. The building was locked, but I waited in the parking lot. At 6:37 p.m., his car pulled in. I stepped out, stood by his door before he could exit. "Dad," he said, clearly startled. "What are you?" "We need to talk," I said. We stood outside his car, in the glare of the parking lot lights. "I know about the lease," I began. "The signature isn't mine, and I know when it was submitted. The day of your mother's funeral. That was deliberate." He didn't deny it right away, just stood there, eyes scanning mine like he was waiting for me to say something else. "I was going to tell you," he said finally. "It's just, things moved fast. Lana said..." "Lana doesn't decide what happens to my home," I interrupted. Griffin exhaled, irritated. "It's not just about the house, it's about your safety. Downsizing, support, structure. Don't give me the brochure again, Griffin." He fell quiet. I stepped closer. "You had me sign something else last year, about the trust. Do you remember that?" He shrugged. "You said it was fine. You signed it. But I didn't sign the lease, and I didn't approve this plan. So now you're going to tell me the truth, because I have a copy of the trust addendum, the one Mom kept." That got his attention. His jaw tightened, and he didn't say another word. I left him standing there in the dark. That night, I received another call. Same number. Unknown. This time, a woman's voice, whispering. "You need to check your wife's safe before they do." "I already have," I said. "Who is this?" Click. Line went dead. The attic was colder than I remembered. The wood floor creaked beneath my feet, a haunting echo that followed me to the far corner where the safe had rested untouched for years. Dust clung to its edges, and my fingers shook as I dialed the old combination. Marjorie had insisted on keeping it mechanical. "No electronics," she once said. "Too easy to tamper with." At the time, I'd smiled at her caution. Now, I was grateful for it. The door swung open with a reluctant groan. Inside, everything was where I remembered. A velvet pouch holding her wedding ring, a few insurance documents, birth certificates sealed in plastic sleeves. But then, an envelope, aged and yellowing slightly around the edges, lay flat against the back wall. In Marjorie's handwriting, the words, "For you if I'm gone." My breath caught. I reached for it like it might vanish if I moved too fast. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, legs stiff, heart pounding. The flap opened with a whisper. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once, and the familiar loop of her pen greeted me. "Harlan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if they're showing you brochures or smiling too much, it means I was right." I stared, stunned. Griffin has a way of making people feel safe. It's why I kept quiet when I first noticed the change. After my diagnosis, he started calling more, showing up with groceries I didn't ask for, asking about the house, the trust. I wanted to believe it was love, but something always felt off, like he was measuring the windows for new curtains before we were even gone. She'd met with a lawyer, a revised will. She hadn't told me, not because she didn't trust me, because she did. She wrote, "You always see the best in people. Har, even when they don't deserve it. That's what makes you beautiful. but it's also what makes you vulnerable. Tears fell before I noticed them. My fingers trembled. I hadn't cried at her funeral. Not like this. Tucked behind the letter was a second envelope, sealed, notarized, dated 1 month before she passed, her final will. I opened it carefully, like it might crack in my hands. Griffin was cut out entirely. Her assets were left solely in my name, with a clause. Nothing may be transferred to Griffin Seibert without Harlan's written, notarized consent. And she'd named a legal witness, Ruth Weston, her childhood friend and a woman I hadn't seen in years. There was also a phone number handwritten in red ink at the bottom of the will. Call Michael Ashford. He knows everything. I sat stunned, the letter shaking in my lap. Michael Ashford. Marjorie had mentioned him once. The lawyer who helped me save my father's farm. A quiet man. Meticulous. If he was still practicing, maybe. I climbed downstairs, cradling the letter like it was made of glass. The house felt too large, too quiet. I opened the phone book. Yes, I still had one, and found him. Office still listed in Albany. I dialed. 1 ring, 2. Then voicemail. My name is Harlan Seibert, I said. My wife, Marjorie, said you'd help me. Please call. I hung up. Then I just sat. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't denial. I felt something shift. Slow. Heavy. Final. Like a door closing behind me. For years, I'd let things slide for the sake of family. Biting my tongue. Letting Griffin interrupt. Pretending Lana's remarks didn't sting. All in the name of peace. But now, peace felt like poison. I pulled out a yellowed notebook from the kitchen drawer, drew a line down the middle. One side, events. The other, names. I listed the lease, the date of the signature, the missing checkbook, the forged documents, the brunch conversation, the trust agreement. Then, a sudden thought. I opened the drawer beside the fridge, the one we never used for anything important. Wedged in the back, almost invisible under some old takeout menus, was a business card. Timberline lock safe. James Muller. Certified locksmith. I didn't know him. On the back, a date written in pen. July 12th. Last month. I swallowed. So the locks had been changed, without my permission, probably while I was out for groceries or one of my morning walks. Maybe even during Marjorie's funeral. I pressed the card to the table, my fist closing around it. The landline rang. It was nearly midnight. I picked it up cautiously. You need to check your wife's safe, a man's voice said. Before they do. Who is this? But the line went dead. I ran back up to the attic, yanked the safe door open again, and scanned every document. Corner, an envelope. Nothing more. Unless... I tapped the back wall of the safe. Hollow. Gently. I ran my fingers along the metal edges, and there it was. A slim false panel. Behind it, an envelope, unmarked, thick, heavy. Just then, headlights flashed outside. Knocking. Not frantic, not friendly. I grabbed the new envelope and tucked it deep inside the lining of my old military coat, hanging behind the attic door. I crept downstairs. Mr. Seibert? A voice called from outside. Calm, steady. You left a message. I think it's time we talked, before your son does something permanent. The man at my door stood with the stillness of someone used to being watched. Early 40s, navy blue suit, polished shoes, and a leather briefcase he never let leave his hand. He looked like someone who'd walked out of a courtroom into a Norman Rockwell painting. You must be Mr. Seibert, he said calmly, extending his hand. Michael Ashford. We shook hands, but neither of us smiled. I stepped aside to let him in, and he entered with a quiet precision, his eyes taking in every corner of the living room like he was filing away evidence. I offered him coffee. He declined. Let's sit, I said, motioning toward the couch. Michael chose the armchair instead, back straight, briefcase resting across his knees. He didn't open it yet. Instead, he looked at me, not with pity, but with something closer to curiosity. Your voicemail was unexpected, but I'm glad you called. I nodded. You knew Marjorie? I helped her file a revised will. She said she didn't want her husband blindsided after she was gone. That cracked something inside me. A small tremor of guilt, of love, still alive in echoes. Michael finally opened the briefcase and pulled out a worn brown folder. Inside was a photocopy of the filing record. Filed legally. Final revision. It names you as sole executor. Griffin only inherits upon your written approval. He glanced up. Do you recall ever giving that approval? No, I said firmly. And I never would have. His eyes darkened slightly. Then this next part may upset you. He pulled another document, an official request for a duplicate copy of the will. Filed 2 weeks after Marjorie's passing. The requester, Griffin Seibert. I stared at the name like it was poison. So he's known all along, I muttered. He knew this wasn't his to touch. Michael gave a tight nod. He's been pretending you're on board while building a narrative around your consent. I leaned back, hands clenched. Then he'll be surprised to learn I've just started paying attention. Michael shifted gears. Did Marjorie ever mention a lake house to you? A what? He reached again into the folder. It was a property she inherited before you were married. Upstate, near Cayuga, titled under her maiden name until it was changed. He held up another document. To a new owner last week. The name on the title, Griffin Seibert. I didn't sign anything, I whispered. Michael studied me. Any chance he got you to sign something without context? A cold knot formed in my stomach. Maybe. Months ago, he brought over paperwork. Said it was insurance-related. I was grieving. Distracted. You signed the last page? I nodded slowly. Michael didn't scold. He only said, that was likely it. He slipped the transfer form in standard bait and switch. I covered my face with my hands. God help me, I let it happen. No, he said firmly. He orchestrated it, and we can fight it. He laid out the plan like a general before battle. First, we file for a temporary restraining order on all remaining assets, including this house. That prevents further transfer without your consent. Then we notify the county recorder's office, and I'll file an emergency motion with family court. I exhaled deeply. And Griffin? Don't confront him. Not yet. He could escalate. I looked him dead in the eye. No more waiting. But fine, I'll play it your way. For now. He stood, closing his briefcase. One last thing, he added. We'll use your voicemail to me, the revised will, and your current physical residence as proof of standing. That'll buy us time. When he left, I sat in silence. The house felt hollow, the ticking clock louder than usual. I wandered into the den, past the fireplace, and picked up Marjorie's letter from the mantel. I read it again, slower this time. Don't let them rush you. Har, you're smarter than that. I folded the letter and walked back to the fireplace, pulled the forged lease, the one from Griffin's envelope, from the drawer. With one motion, I lit the fire and fed it into the flames. Let it burn. Let it all burn. My phone buzzed on the side table. It was a message from Griffin. Dad, family meeting this Sunday. Everyone's coming. You better be there. I didn't answer. I needed time and leverage. Griffin's house looked like it had been staged for a photo shoot. The front lawn was manicured. Lights glowed warmly behind the curtains, and a faint tune drifted out from the speakers near the porch. I parked at the curb, hands resting on the steering wheel longer than I meant to. My chest tightened with something that wasn't quite fear, more like awareness. Something was off. Inside, the air smelled of pot roast and expensive red wine. Children darted between legs, laughing. Claire handed out drinks like it was Thanksgiving. Olivia greeted me with a hug that lingered too long. Trent patted my back like he'd known me for years, though I hadn't seen him in a decade. They were all here. Too many smiles. Too much politeness. This wasn't a meeting. It was a setup. Griffin stood at the center of the living room, wine glass in hand, clearing his throat like a CEO about to deliver a quarterly report. Thank you all for being here, he said, smiling. It means a lot. He looked right at me. Especially you, Dad. I nodded but didn't speak. We've been concerned, he continued, his voice soft. There have been signs. Claire stepped forward, as if on cue. Dad, remember the night you left the stove on? Or when you didn't recognize Aunt Nancy on the phone? I raised an eyebrow. We don't have an Aunt Nancy. She paused, flustered. Griffin didn't blink. It's just, you've been under stress, he said. Losing Mom, managing the house alone. We thought, well, it might be time to talk about what's best for you. He reached under the coffee table and lifted a folder, thick, bound, and printed on cream-colored paper. He laid it on the dining table like a magician unveiling the final act. This is a conservatorship petition, he said gently. It's temporary, just until we can make sure you're okay. Olivia slid a pen across the table. The room went still. Even the kids had quieted. I looked down at the folder, then slowly back at Griffin. Who wrote this affidavit? Griffin's smile twitched. It's a joint statement, from me, Claire, and a few others. I stepped forward, pulled a folded document from my coat pocket, and laid it beside his. This is your mother's final will. Trent shifted uneasily. Olivia's smile faded. She named me sole executor, I said, voice steady. Griffin receives nothing without my written consent. Griffin chuckled. Too quickly. Dad, come on. That was before. You said we'd update. I never agreed to update anything, I cut in. And if you've presented anything else to this family, it's forgery. The air cracked like ice. Trent stepped forward. That's not what you showed me. Griffin, you said everything was already signed. Claire backed away, phone in hand, whispering something I couldn't hear. Olivia looked between us. Why would Aunt Marjorie do this? I met her eyes. Because she knew her son better than she let on. She met with a lawyer. Updated her will, left everything in order before she passed. Silence. I stood there, watching them. My family, or what was left of it. A room full of well-dressed strangers playing a script. Finally, I turned to the door. This meeting is over, I said. Next time you pull a stunt like this, Griffin, I won't just bring the will, I'll bring the sheriff. I stepped out into the evening air, the door clicking shut behind me. The chill cut through my coat, but my spine was straighter than it had been in months. As I reached for my car door, I caught a glimpse of Claire's phone screen through the window, connected via Bluetooth. Sheriff office, line 2. My pulse skipped. Was she calling for help, or against me? The buzz of my phone woke me before the sun did. I squinted at the screen. 23 notifications. Missed calls from Michael. A text, bold and urgent. Turn on the local channel, now. I sat up, heart already braced for another punch. The remote felt heavy in my hand as I fumbled with the buttons. The screen flickered to life. Channel 6 News. There, in crisp high definition, was the face of Griffin, and beside him, Claire. The anchor's voice was steady, clipped. New developments in a case of alleged elder exploitation have surfaced in Westchester County, where a well-known retired engineer claims his son forged documents to seize property and control legal decisions. My mouth went dry. Photos of our family flashed across the screen. Our old Christmas card, Griffin's wedding, Marjorie's smiling face. Then came a screenshot of the conservatorship petition. My name, bold and center, underlined in red. A pit formed in my gut. But there was something else too. Relief. They weren't hiding anymore. And now, neither was I. 2 weeks earlier, I had sat across from Janelle Morgan, a local investigative journalist who came highly recommended by Michael. She wasn't just a reporter. She had a mission, exposing abuse hidden behind closed doors. She had asked hard questions, but never cruel ones. Do you think this was planned from the beginning? She asked me that day, her recorder silently capturing every word. I took a long breath. I think it started as silence, I told her. A silence we let slide because we think love excuses everything. But silence grows teeth. And before you know it, it's chewing through the floorboards of your life. She had looked at me with something close to sorrow. And you believe your son orchestrated this to take your home? No, I replied. I believe he took advantage of my grief and my trust. And if I stay silent now, I'd be helping him do it to someone else. Watching her segment now, I saw the footage she'd used, the careful framing of our house, shots of my front porch, even a slow pan across Marjorie's favorite rose bush. The intimacy of it was startling. Within minutes, the messages began pouring in. A neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years texted, "Just saw the news. I'm so sorry. We had no idea." My niece Olivia, who'd been quiet since the family ambush, finally wrote, "Uncle Harlan, I didn't know it was that serious. I'm sorry I didn't ask more questions." Even my old veterans group left a voicemail. "Harlan, we've got your back. This happens more than people admit. We'd be honored if you came and spoke about it." My hands trembled, not with weakness, with a kind of furious gratitude. But it didn't take long before the storm hit my doorstep. Around noon, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel, Griffin's SUV. He slammed the car door with enough force to rattle the windows and marched up my porch like a man denied his prize. "What the hell did you do?" he barked. I stepped out, calm. "You mean the truth? I told it." He scoffed, eyes wild. "You had no right to air our family's dirty laundry on TV." I stepped closer, slow and even. "You already ruined this family the day you forged your mother's will. I just brought light to what you thought would stay in the dark." He paced like a caged animal. "You think people will side with you? You're an old man clinging to a house." "No," I said, my voice colder now. "I'm an old man protecting his wife's legacy, and I've got proof. You have paperwork soaked in lies." His jaw clenched. "You think this ends here, don't you? You don't know me." "I do now," I replied. "That's the problem." He stormed off, tires spinning as he pulled out. That night, I sat on the porch, staring out at the field beyond the tree line. The wind had picked up, rustling the brittle leaves that clung to the last days of fall. I held the letter from Janelle again. She wanted to follow up, said the story was gaining attention beyond the county. National eyes were watching now. She had an invitation, a live segment on family betrayals, part of a Sunday evening program that reached millions. At first, I hesitated. The idea of our pain becoming primetime material made my stomach twist. But then I looked at Marjorie's picture again. She'd fought for her father's farm once, told me that in a rare moment of vulnerability, back when we were just dating. "Sometimes," she had said, "you have to embarrass the wolves if you want to keep them from coming back." I stood up from the rocking chair, joints creaking. "Then let the truth have its day," I whispered. As I turned back inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "They want you on live TV, this Sunday. Prime time. Are you ready?" I looked down at my hands, wrinkled now, veined and spotted, but steady, strong, the calluses still faint from a lifetime of holding tools. "Not surrender." I replied with a single word. "Yes." The group message came at 7:03 a.m. "Claire, we're hoping to have a calm discussion today. Griffin's hosting at 2 p.m. It's time we healed." There was no "hello, Harlan," no "dad," just a directive wrapped in a smiley face emoji and the word "healed." I stared at it for a long moment, then placed the phone down. My hands didn't shake this time, not because I wasn't angry, but because I'd expected this. I'd been preparing for it. They didn't know I had the pen in my jacket pocket, the one with the tiny switch just beneath the clip, a recorder, loaded and waiting. Griffin's home sat like a picture-perfect illusion. Crisp hedges, balloons tied to the mailbox like it was someone's birthday. Inside, the facade continued, a tray of pastries, citrus water with floating mint leaves, light jazz humming from a corner speaker. But what caught my attention wasn't the snacks. It was the presence of Claire's lawyer, a man I'd never seen before, and a notary already setting up his stamp kit like we were closing a house sale. They didn't greet me, just nodded, almost with pity. Griffin motioned for me to sit. Claire smiled thinly. "We're glad you came," she said. "We've all been hurting." I sat at the far end of the long dining table. Olivia was already there, no makeup, looking tired, eyes darting between them and me. I said nothing, just looked at each of them, then folded my hands. Griffin opened a leather folder and fanned out 3 sets of documents. "We want to be clear about intentions today," he began. "This is not an attack. It's a clarification process. I said nothing. Claire chimed in. We're concerned about stability. It's been a lot, and there's been confusion. Then Olivia read from a printed page, clearly scripted. This is a voluntary declaration to align understanding among family members for the sake of transparency. A mutual asset clarification form, followed by a living arrangement disclosure. Then, buried 3 pages in, a power of attorney document, backdated. Already pre-signed by 2 witnesses whose names I didn't recognize. They slid a pen toward me. Dad, Griffin said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Rehearsed. Performative. This is just a formality. Everyone's agreed. We just need your part. I picked up the pen. The room held its breath. Then I flicked the switch and pressed play. Griffin's voice, sharp and unmistakable, filled the room. We'll make it look like he agreed. Just get him to sign. If we all say the same thing, no one can prove anything different. The air changed. The jazz stopped. Someone had bumped the remote. Claire's lawyer froze mid-sip. Olivia's mouth opened, then closed again. Claire's voice followed, just as damning. He won't fight. He never does. He's too proud to drag this through court. I set the pen down. No one moved. Then Olivia whispered, You recorded them? I turned to her gently. I recorded the truth. She looked at Griffin, betrayed. You told me this was just about organizing things. You said we were protecting him. Griffin's face darkened. You had no right. No right? I repeated. No right to record a conspiracy about stripping me of rights in my own house? Claire tried to recover. That was taken out of context. Context? I leaned forward. How many versions of my signature have you rehearsed? Claire? Her lawyer cleared his throat. I think we need to pause. We're past pause, I said calmly. We're at confession. Olivia stood abruptly. I didn't sign anything. I didn't know this was like this. She looked between Griffin and Claire. You used me. Claire's expression cracked, just for a second. We were protecting family assets. You were protecting your debt, I said. Griffin tried to grab the documents, but I beat him to it, sliding them into a folder and tucking them under my arm. I stood. This family stopped being a home, I said evenly. The day Trust left the room. No one stopped me as I walked to the door. The notary quietly packed up his materials. Claire looked down. Griffin looked furious. Olivia looked broken. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I just left. Outside. The winter air was crisp. I took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. Michael Ashford. That recording, we're taking it to court tomorrow. I've already prepped the injunction paperwork. I looked back at the house behind me, where people I once loved had drawn battle lines in ink. The war wasn't in whispers anymore. Now, it would be settled in daylight. I woke up to the buzzing of my phone. Not the morning sun. 7 missed calls. 4 voicemails. A dozen text messages. All variations of the same thing. Turn on the news. Michael's text stood out among them. Michael Ashford. KPTX Channel 7. Now. My fingers trembled slightly as I picked up the remote. The screen came alive mid-broadcast, just as the segment title flashed. Breaking. Elder abuse allegation rocks suburbia. Family meeting audio leaked. And then I heard my son's voice. Just get him to sign. We'll make it look like he agreed. It echoed through the room like a slow, cruel slap. Claire's voice was silent, but her nod was visible in the security footage, right behind Griffin. My face wasn't on screen, but my story was. They played clips of the meeting I'd recorded with the hidden pen, the one I used when I realized I'd have to protect myself from my own blood. 2 weeks earlier, I had sat across from a local reporter, Janelle Rivera, in a small studio downtown. Michael had set it up. He said, "Let people hear your side before Griffin rewrites it." I hadn't planned to speak so freely, but the moment the camera started rolling, something cracked open. I didn't talk about revenge. I talked about silence, about Marjorie, who warned me, about how betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with contracts and polite smiles. Janelle asked me plainly, "Do you think your son did this for money?" I looked at the floor. Then I looked at her. I think it started with silence, but silence grows teeth, and now it bites. The segment went viral. Comments poured in on the live stream. "This man's story is every grandparent's nightmare. We need laws to stop this. Where's the son now?" My neighbors started calling, people who hadn't spoken to me in months. One said, "I'm sorry I believed the rumors. You deserve better." Olivia sent a message. "I didn't know it was that serious. I'm so sorry. Dad." I read it 3 times before setting the phone down, and then, like clockwork, the other shoe dropped. Griffin came barreling into my driveway at dusk. No knock, just the sound of his door slamming and his shoes scraping up my porch. I stood in the doorway before he could even ring the bell. His face was red, fists clenched. "Why the hell would you go public? You embarrassed me. You embarrassed the entire family." I didn't flinch. "You embarrassed yourself the day you forged my signature and called it love." His eyes darted left, then right, like someone searching for a lie to stand on. "I was trying to protect the family's legacy," he spat. "No," I said. "You were trying to protect your mess. And you tried to do it with my home, my name, and my silence." He didn't argue. He turned, but before he left, he hissed, "If you think this ends here, you don't know me." I closed the door behind him slowly, not with fear, but with finality. That night, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't Janelle. It was bigger. Truth Uncovered. A national investigative show. They wanted me to speak, not just to upstate New York, but to the country. Their producer's voice was calm, but urgent. "We're doing a feature on financial abuse of the elderly. Your name came up. We'd like to invite you to share your story on live television this Sunday night." I looked out the window at the darkened sky, thought about the decades I spent building, providing, protecting. I thought of Marjorie, of her laugh, her warnings. And I said, if this helps stop just one more family from doing what mine did, then yes, I'm ready. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror. The lines on my face looked deeper, my hair thinner, my shoulders more square. I didn't see a victim. I saw a father who had finally stopped whispering, because once the lies echoed beyond these walls, the truth started to feel like thunder. I parked 3 houses down from Claire's place. The driveway was full. Griffin's Tesla, Olivia's SUV, a car I didn't recognize. The street looked calm, quiet, but the air carried a charge, like the seconds before thunder. Michael had insisted I bring 2 things: the pen recorder, now tucked in my inner coat pocket, and a retired judge named Walter Keene, waiting in his car a block away with Michael himself. Claire's message had been careful. Let's put this to rest. Harlan, just talk. No lawyers, just family. I agreed, but I didn't walk in blind anymore. Inside, the living room was staged like a peace summit. Candles, coffee, even a tray of fruit. Griffin stood when I entered, too quickly. Claire smiled as if nothing had happened. Olivia sat at the edge of the couch, eyes bloodshot. No one spoke for a moment. Just nods. Artificial warmth. Claire gestured toward the chair across from them. Please, Harlan, sit. Let's be done with all this ugliness. I sat. Griffin began. Dad, we've had time to think. Emotions got out of hand. We want to find a resolution that makes everyone feel safe. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, neatly printed forms, legal phrasing, boxes to initial. Claire leaned forward. It's a simple declaration, a mutual understanding. You'll keep the main house. Of course. We just need clarity on asset management moving forward. My hand hovered over the folder. Go ahead, Griffin said. Just read it over. No pressure. I flipped the first page. Legal language danced like camouflage. Halfway through, I saw it. A declaration of diminished capacity, signed but undated, with a space for my signature at the bottom. Another page confirmed transfer of co-executorship to Claire. A third added Griffin as medical proxy. It was a paper trail disguised as kindness. When I didn't speak, Griffin's voice hardened. Dad, don't make this difficult. We've all seen the confusion, the forgetfulness. It's not a crime to age. Olivia glanced away. Claire took the baton. You're not being removed. Harlan, you're being protected. From stress. From decisions that could unintentionally hurt your legacy. I looked at the notary standing in the corner, neutral-faced, already flipping to the page with the signature line. Another woman stepped from the hallway, holding a briefcase. Claire introduced her with feigned brightness. This is Janine. She's here in a consulting capacity, completely neutral. She wasn't. Her body language screamed allegiance, and that's when I spoke. Before I sign anything, I said, reaching slowly into my coat, I think it's only fair we get all voices on the record. I pressed the top of my pen. The room stiffened. From my coat pocket, a small speaker crackled to life. Griffin's voice. Recorded 2 nights ago. Just get him to sign it. Once it's notarized, it's over. He won't even know what hit him. Claire's voice followed. Make it look like concern. Smile. Cry if you need to. The room shattered into silence. Olivia gasped. Claire went pale. Griffin stood but said nothing. I walked to the front door and opened it. Michael stepped in. Behind him, Judge Walter Keene followed. Placing a stack of documents on the table without greeting, Michael addressed the room. This is now a legal matter. These recordings, the documents, the timing, everything will be reviewed in court. Griffin's voice returned, this time live, sharp and trembling. You set us up. I protected myself, I replied. From my own blood. Claire stood and grabbed Olivia's arm. Say nothing. You don't owe him anything. But Olivia pulled away. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You threatened me. You said I wouldn't see my kids again if I didn't go along with this. Claire hissed, Don't you dare! And slapped her. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. The notary stepped back, visibly shaken. The lawyer, Janine, said nothing, just closed her briefcase, quietly walked out the door. Judge Keene looked around the room, then addressed the remaining 3. I've seen enough, and I've seen this before. Elder fraud isn't always about money, it's about power. And right now, all of you are complicit. Claire screamed Griffin's name, but he wasn't listening. He was staring at me. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply walked out. The folder untouched on the table. Behind me, voices clashed. Chairs scraped. Olivia cried. And for once, I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. You only turn around if something's still worth saving. That house wasn't. That room wasn't. That version of family never was. As I stepped into the evening air, Michael caught up beside me. The judge's statement is admissible. I'll file everything tonight. Then his phone buzzed. He showed me the screen. Breaking news alert. KPTX News special report. Local family power struggle. Audio evidence leaked. I exhaled, not in relief, but in readiness. The world had heard me once. Now, it would see them. I arrived at the courthouse just after 8. The morning air was sharp, almost metallic, the kind of chill that reminds you you're alive. Michael stood beside me, the retired judge trailing just behind. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Across the street, news vans were already lined up like scavengers waiting for a carcass. Someone had leaked the recording. I didn't ask who. It didn't matter anymore. The story was out. Claire and Griffin were already inside, seated at the defendant's table with their lawyer, a man with slicked back hair and 2 white teeth. Griffin looked calm, polished even, but his fingers tapped rhythmically against the oak bench. Claire kept glancing at the gallery like a stage actress awaiting her cue. Olivia sat 1 row behind them, rigid, her eyes fixed on the floor. She hadn't even looked at me when I passed. The judge, a woman named Ellen Harkness, entered the courtroom with a commanding quiet. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The weight of the morning did the talking. Mr. Ashford, she began. You may proceed. Michael stood with the kind of poise I'd seen in soldiers and surgeons. He inserted a small USB into the courtroom monitor system. "We submit the following audio as Exhibit A," he said calmly, "recorded with full legal consent during a pre-arranged family meeting in the presence of both parties." Then it began. Griffin's voice filled the room. "We'll make it look like he agreed. Just get him to sign." Claire chimed in seconds later, her tone syrupy. "We're doing this for his own good. If he won't see reason, then we push for mental incompetence." There were gasps. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God," just loud enough for the bailiff to hush them. The judge didn't flinch. She just stared at the screen, stone-faced, absorbing each word like it was an indictment of her own profession. Then Olivia's voice, timid, frightened. "Do I have to lie?" Griffin again. "You want to see your kids or not?" By the time the recording ended, you could hear the silence like a dropped pin. I didn't look at Griffin or Claire. I didn't look at Olivia. I just stared forward, letting the courtroom carry what I no longer could. Judge Harkness leaned slightly forward. "This court finds the petition for mental incompetence to be not only unfounded, but based on coercion, manipulation, and possible fraud. Effective immediately. All financial transfers involving Mr. Harlan Seibert's estate, trust, or associated properties are frozen pending full investigation." Griffin blinked rapidly. Claire turned a shade of pale I hadn't seen before. Olivia. She still didn't look at me. The judge continued. "Mr. Seibert remains the sole executor of his estate, and his mental capacity is affirmed. This court will open proceedings into potential civil and criminal violations committed by parties present." It was done, legally, at least. The truth had been spoken, not whispered, but projected, outside. As I stepped through the doors, microphones swarmed. "Mr. Seibert, did you know your son was planning this? How long have you been fighting this? Do you think this case will change how elder financial abuse is handled?" I didn't answer any of them, not out of defiance. I just didn't want to speak for a while. Michael shielded me, ushering me toward the car. But behind me, I heard a scuffle. Griffin had snapped. Cameras caught the moment he shoved a local reporter and yelled something about being set up. Within an hour, his board placed him on indefinite leave. Power of attorney. Scam was trending before I finished my tea that afternoon. That evening, as the sun painted the sky with streaks of surrender, my phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm scared. I need to talk. Just me." I didn't reply at first. Instead, I pulled out a faded photo from the back of a drawer. Olivia at 10 years old, her fishing pole twice her height, grinning beside me on the dock at Echo Lake. Back then, her world was simple. Her trust was complete. I typed slowly. "Tomorrow, my front porch, no one else." She replied with a single word. "Okay." I made myself tea. The kettle hissed like a warning. I stared at the picture of Marjorie above the fireplace. She always knew this day would come. She had just hoped I'd be ready. "We did everything right," I whispered to her. "And still, this." Then I stepped out to the porch, wrapped in silence, watching the stars blink awake one by one, not victorious, not broken, just waiting. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more lies. But either way, I'd face it head on. I always had. The morning sun hadn't fully cleared the trees when I heard the gravel crunch under soft footsteps. Olivia stood at the edge of my porch, holding a worn brown envelope against her chest like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her eyes were red, but dry. That told me more than any tears could have. I didn't say a word, just opened the door and motioned toward the porch chair opposite mine. She sat, carefully, like she wasn't sure she deserved the seat. "I brought something," she said. Her voice trembled. I poured 2 mugs of tea. No sugar, just the way her mother used to drink it. I set one down in front of her and leaned back, waiting. Olivia stared at the envelope for a long time before placing it between us. Griffin hid these, after Mom passed. I looked down. The handwriting was unmistakable. Marjorie's loops and firm lines. My throat tightened. "There are letters," Olivia whispered. From Mom. And one more thing. She opened the envelope. Inside were 3 letters, folded carefully, and one sealed legal document. She passed them over slowly, as if she feared what they might change. I opened the first letter. My wife's voice returned instantly, in ink and memory. If you're reading this, it means they've tried to tear us apart, but you must protect the legacy, not for the money, but the meaning. The second page was a will, a real one, dated 6 weeks before her passing, signed by Marjorie, notarized, and witnessed. In it, she named me as sole trustee. Griffin was excluded unless he completed 5 years of community service and full financial audit. Olivia was given conditional inheritance, to be honored only if she upheld the ethical mission of the Seibert Family Trust. If either child failed to meet those terms, the estate would revert to a charitable foundation in my name and Marjorie's. The final clause took my breath. If trust is broken, let dignity prevail. Our name should mean something, even if it's carried by strangers. I sat in silence, the weight of her words anchoring me to the wooden porch. Olivia sat across, shoulders hunched, bracing for judgment. I didn't know she made another will, she said. He told me it was just grief talking, that Mom didn't trust herself toward the end. I didn't answer. Olivia reached across the table, her fingers barely touching the edge of the page. I'll testify. I'll back everything. Griffin, Claire. They can't hide behind lies anymore. I nodded once. Later that day, Michael confirmed it. The testament was legally binding and would nullify every forged document Griffin had used. Charges were expedited. Claire disappeared from public life. Griffin was arrested for multiple counts of fraud and coercion. Olivia gave her statement, in full. The estate returned to its rightful place, but not without cost. That evening, Olivia and I walked the tree line at the back of the property, the same stretch where I'd planted apple trees when she was 5. She stopped near the tallest one and looked up. "Will you ever forgive me?" she asked. I paused. "I'll always be your father," I said. "But forgiveness, that's not a word. It's a path. You walk it by how you live forward." She nodded slowly, didn't cry, just understood. Months passed, and then one bright spring morning, I stood before a small crowd at the community center. Elders, neighbors, veterans, families, people who had followed the story, who saw not just the scandal, but the strength behind it. A cloth was pulled back from a small plaque on the wall. The Marion Seibert Foundation for Dignity, Family, and Truth. I stepped to the microphone, steadied myself. "We grow old," I said, scanning faces both familiar and new. "But we are never powerless. Not if we remember who we are and what we refuse to let die." They clapped, but I wasn't speaking for applause. I was speaking for those who couldn't anymore, for those whose children had silenced them, for the elders betrayed in quiet rooms, behind signed papers and false smiles. As I stepped down, I caught Olivia's eye in the crowd. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She simply stood. That was enough. Final reflection. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from blood, but justice, when held with patience, memory, and truth, can heal across generations. Power doesn't fade with age. You lose it only if you hand it over.